In the dim glow of a flickering emergency light, single dad Mark Thompson clutched his 5-year-old daughter's hand, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The elevator had jolted to a stop between floors, trapping them in a steel box that felt more like a coffin. But what happened next would shatter the ice around a billionaire's heart and rewrite 2 broken lives forever. If this story tugs at your heartstrings, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of unexpected twists and triumphs, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Mark had always been the kind of guy who played by the rules, even when life didn't. At 32, he was a widower scraping by as a maintenance worker in the gleaming skyscraper of Apex Industries, one of the world's top tech firms. His wife, Emily, had passed away 2 years ago from a rare illness, leaving him to raise little Sophie alone. Mornings were a blur of cereal spills and rushed daycare drop-offs, evenings a grind of bills and bedtime stories. That fateful Friday, he'd been called in for an emergency repair on the executive floor, something about a faulty circuit in the CEO's private suite. Sophie was with him because the sitter had bailed, and he couldn't afford to lose the overtime pay. "Just stay close, kiddo," he'd whispered as they stepped into the service elevator. But in his haste, he'd hit the wrong button, the one for the VIP lift reserved for the elite. Across from him stood Victoria Hale, the infamous CEO of Apex. At 35, she was a force of nature, sharp suits, sharper tongue, and a reputation for ruthlessness that could freeze a boardroom. Dubbed the Ice Queen by the tabloids, she'd built her empire from nothing, orphaning her own dreams of family along the way. Abandoned as a child, Victoria had clawed her way up, trusting no one. Relationships? A distraction. Emotions? A weakness. She was en route to a high-stakes merger meeting, her phone glued to her ear, barking orders at some hapless assistant. When the elevator lurched and the lights died, she didn't panic, she seethed. "This better not make me late," she muttered, slamming her fist against the emergency button. The darkness enveloped them like a shroud. Sophie whimpered, burying her face in Mark's leg. "Daddy, it's scary," she said, her voice tiny and trembling. Mark knelt down, pulling her into his arms. "Hey, princess, it's okay. Remember the story about the brave knight in the dark castle? We're just on an adventure." He hummed a lullaby Emily used to sing, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. Victoria rolled her eyes in the shadows, but something in that melody tugged at a buried memory. She paced the small space, her heels clicking impatiently. Great, stuck with a janitor and his kid. This day couldn't get worse. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The elevator's emergency phone rang once, promising help in about an hour. Mark tried to make small talk to ease the tension. "So, you run this place? Must be exciting." Victoria snorted. "Exciting? It's survival. You wouldn't understand." But as the air grew stuffy, barriers cracked. Sophie, ever the innocent icebreaker, peeked up at Victoria. "Are you a princess? You look like one from my books." Victoria froze, her polished facade slipping for a split second. No one had ever called her that, not since she was a girl in foster care, dreaming of fairy tales that never came true. "No, sweetie. I'm just the boss." As the conversation haltingly flowed, Mark shared his story. How Emily's diagnosis had come out of nowhere, how he'd quit his engineering job to care for her, only to end up fixing toilets to pay the medical debts. "I do it for her," he said, nodding at Sophie. "She's my whole world." Victoria listened, arms crossed, but her eyes softened. She hadn't planned to open up, but the confinement wore her down. "I grew up in the system," she admitted quietly. "No family, no safety net. I built this company so I'd never need anyone again." Mark nodded. "Sounds lonely." She shot him a glare. "Lonely beats broken." Then, disaster struck. The elevator groaned, and the lights flickered wildly. A sharp jolt sent them stumbling. Sophie screamed as a panel loosened, sparks flying. Mark shielded her with his body, but in the chaos, Victoria twisted her ankle, collapsing against the wall. "Damn it," she hissed through gritted teeth. Mark sprang into action, his maintenance skills kicking in. He pried open the control panel with a multi-tool from his belt, fumbling in the dim light to reroute the wiring. "Hold on, I've got this," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. Sophie clung to Victoria's leg, and to Mark's surprise, the CEO didn't pull away. Instead, she stroked the girl's hair awkwardly. "It's okay, little one. Your dad's a hero." The light stabilized with a hum, bathing the elevator in a soft glow. That's when it happened. Victoria looked up at Mark, really looked at him, and gasped. His face, illuminated clearly for the first time, was unmistakable. "Mark? Mark Thompson," she whispered, her voice breaking. He blinked, recognition dawning. "Vicky? From high school?" It all flooded back. They'd been childhood sweethearts in a small town, sharing dreams under starry skies. Victoria, back then, just Vicky, had left abruptly after her parents' abandonment, vanishing into the foster system without a word. Mark had searched for her, heartbroken, but life moved on. He met Emily, built a family. She reinvented herself, burying the past. Tears welled in Victoria's eyes, the first in years. "I thought you'd forgotten me. I had to leave. I couldn't drag you down." Mark shook his head, helping her to her feet. "I never forgot. You were my first love." Sophie watched wide-eyed as the two adults embraced tentatively, the elevator's confines forcing honesty. In that moment, the ruthless CEO crumbled, revealing the vulnerable girl beneath. "I've been so alone," Victoria confessed. "Chasing success, but missing this." The elevator doors finally pried open an hour later, rescue team applauding. But the real rescue had happened inside. Mark carried Sophie out, Victoria limping beside him, her arm linked with his for support. In the days that followed, challenges mounted. Victoria's board questioned her distraction when she invited Mark to consult on Apex's engineering projects, his old passion. Rumors swirled, tabloids hounded them. Mark worried about uprooting Sophie's life, and old wounds resurfaced. Victoria's fear of vulnerability clashed with Mark's grief over Emily. Yet, they faced it together. Victoria funded a foundation for single parents in Emily's name, channeling her ruthlessness into advocacy. Mark designed innovative tech for the company, rediscovering his purpose. Sophie blossomed under Victoria's unexpected warmth, calling her Aunt Vicky at first, then something more. Their first real date was simple, a picnic in the park, where Victoria admitted, "I built walls to protect myself, but you showed me they're just prisons." Mark smiled. "And you showed me it's okay to dream again." Months turned to a year. Challenges like blending lives, Victoria's high-profile world versus Mark's humble roots, tested them. A merger nearly fell apart when Victoria prioritized Sophie's school play over a meeting, but it taught her balance. Mark battled insecurity, wondering if he could match her success, but her encouragement rebuilt his confidence. Resolutions came through communication, therapy sessions where they unpacked past traumas, family outings that forged new bonds. One evening, in the same skyscraper, Mark proposed in that very elevator, now reprogrammed as a lucky charm. Victoria said yes, tears streaming. Their wedding was intimate, Sophie as flower girl, symbolizing second chances. Years later, as a family, they reflected on that trapped hour. It had changed everything forever, not with magic, but with raw humanity. Mark built a thriving division at Apex, Victoria softened her empire into one that valued people over profits. Sophie grew up knowing love's resilience. And so, dear viewers, remember, sometimes, life's wrong turns lead to the right places. Trapped moments can free your heart. If this story moved you, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because every tale we share here reminds us that hope flickers even in the darkest elevators. What's your story of unexpected change? Share in the comments below. Until next time, keep believing in forever.